Roger, Tranquility, we copy that. We cannot believe you are on the fucking moon. Repeat, cannot fucking believe it, over. The moon, for Christ's sake. The moon. Over. Descending the ladder. See the Earth. Entire planet Earth. Oh, Christ. We read you, Tranquility, over. On the bottom rung of the ladder. Just one more step and Tranquility. Holy living fuck. Are you fucking believing this, over? I absolutely am standing on the surface of the fucking moon. I'm talking to you from the surface of the fucking moon. Jesus H. Christ in a chicken basket.
Okay, number 5 should show typical lunar landscape and sea rock. Is that the sea rock? And that is a clear letter C on that little rock right there.
In later releases of the same picture, the letter is gone, probably airbrushed out.
Just an example here of how the pictures are manipulated. You'll notice that this little rock here, just at the bottom here, this little rock here, and this little rock here are identical, which is odd on the moon. You would expect them to be at least slightly different, but they're not. This whole section here is an exact duplicate of the section above it, minus this little bit. And coming over to the left here, we have another example. That rock and that rock are identical. Those are identical. That is identical. This whole section here has been duplicated and added in to make the picture look prettier. Which it may make it look a bit prettier, but it's a bit of a cheat, because this is supposed to be a record of one particular event, not a pretty picture. Okay, this is a 360-degree panoramic view of the Taurus Littrow Valley, Apollo 17's landing site. And you'll notice that it is 360 degrees because the lump of rock on the left of the picture and the lump of rock on the right of the picture are identical. So it is 360 degrees. consists of about 15 individual photographs, all strapped together to give us this wonderful panorama. So you could be reasonably certain that somewhere in this picture is the Apollo 17 lander. I can't find it. We know where it should be. It should be pretty well in the centre here.
This wide view is looking across the Taurus Littrow Valley, with a distinctive mountain, a light-coloured mound, and the little feature above it. Now, as we mix through to the TV coverage, the LEM is clearly at the same location. Compare this still image, from which the LEM is absent, with what is obviously the same location where the LEM is present. Although the lighting has changed, the mountain is recognisably the same. All very surprising. This is the landing spot at Taurus Littrow. As the camera pulls back, we can see that all these mountains are located well away from the LEM's landing site. Now, I'd like to draw your attention to some rather peculiar features in the mountains of Taurus Littrow that appear in the record. In the background is a rather distinctive mountain with a steepish slope on the left and a gradual slope off to the right. Centrally positioned is a light-coloured mound and an interesting mini crater feature inset above it. And over to the right is another mound with a larger, darker crater-like feature. We'll be seeing more of this mountain and the mounds in the sequences that follow. Here again is the light-coloured mound on the left, and in the centre the second mound with its larger, darker crater-like feature. Notice in the left foreground are some experiment packages. And now with the LEM in the foreground, you'll recognise the mound with a dark crater-like feature. We have confirmation of the LEM's apparent close proximity to this location by way of this image as well. Note the two key features, the light-coloured mound on the left and the second mound with a darker feature to the right. But when we look again at the wide view of the valley with an astronaut standing by the large split rock, we can see there's no apparent sign whatsoever of the LEM in relation to the scale of the mountains we were looking at in the previous image. Here's another view, this time looking over Split Rock. Notice the crater in the centre with no obvious sign of the lunar module at all, and an even wider composited image revealing an area to the right of the boulder. Surprisingly, this is the area in the centre of the picture where the LEM is supposed to have landed. Look how tiny it is in relation to the setting and the surrounding mountain landscape. What anomalous scaling compared with the close-up view of the LEM we saw earlier. As we bring the centre larger, notice how small the LEM looks in relation to what appear to be absolutely enormous mountains. Returning to the footage we saw previously, compare the mountains seen in the TV coverage with those in this still photograph. They're virtually identical, yet the LEM is absent from the still image and present in the TV coverage.
In this never-before-seen or heard footage, not only is the radio conversation between the astronauts and Houston Control audible, there is a secondary, private conversation taking place between the crew and a third confidential party, prompting the astronauts with what to say, when to speak, and how to effectively manipulate the camera to achieve the desired misleading effect.
Hello, Apollo 11. Houston, Goldstone says that the TV looks great. Over. Okay, Roger, we're wrapping in on Earth.
What they have ingeniously done is placed the camera at the back of the spacecraft and centered the lens on a circular window in the foreground, outside of which it is completely filled with the Earth in low orbit. The circumference of the window then appears to be the diameter of the Earth at a distance, with the darkened walls of the spacecraft appearing to be the blackness of space around it. That is why they wanted the interior dark and blocked out the sun from entering through the other windows. This is a segment that they believed wasn't even being recorded, much less suitable for broadcast, for the lens was being zoomed out and the scene was being changed to that of an interior of the astronauts at work, and apparently the stop button popped back up on the recorder without notice. Here is the diffused work light that they used to see camera controls, but not throw light onto the spacecraft's wall. Here they remove part of the crescent insert. Finally, the iris is opened up and you can see the real location of the camera and the very bright and near Earth out the window.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator at NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight. We're not. And this makes you the real famous person that has discovered this and reveals all this stuff. If you show this publicly, you're open for a lawsuit. Okay?
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
And get the hell out of the Black House.
You'll get a gun and shoot them at them before they get out of the office?
We have a video camera running if you want to do it.
Right.
That would be great footage for us. See you later. In court, I hope.
Want to call the CIA? Have them whacked?
Wanted to give you the opportunity to swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon. Will you put your left hand on the Bible and swear to God that you walked on the moon?
Mr. Sibrel, knowing you, that's probably a fake Bible. You do not deserve answers.
All right, 5 till 2 at 700 WLW. Mike McConnell. Guest again, Mr. Aron Ranen. Making a documentary film trying to prove we went to the moon. It's not all that easy to do, apparently. What have you uncovered, Aron?
Well, I am trying to prove it. And really, I can't find any hard evidence. But I thought was going to be an easy thing to prove. Suddenly we have...
It's not all that provable.
It's not that provable.
Everything that was happening aboard the Apollo 11 flight was constantly streaming down to antenna sites all over the world. From the astronauts' heartbeats to electrical use inside the command module, it was all recorded on these telemetry tapes. So where is this hard evidence?
I haven't seen anything that indicates the telemetry data is even in existence, and as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
But your own research has shown the telemetry data is missing.
That's right.
This film you're making now, what is it?
This is a film trying to prove that Apollo 11 happened.
Does it have a name? I mean, do you have a name for it yet, or
you're calling it Did We Go?
Did we go? Okay. We have been unable to track it down. I mean, we don't know where this telemetry data ended up.
Could this be true? Mankind's first interplanetary exploration and the original science data is missing? Turns out I celebrated a little too early, as I later discovered that the Russians had landed a laser reflector on this unmanned lunar probe. Could the Americans have done the same?
It is fact, it is fiction. It's mixed together. It's hard to separate them until you examine it closely.
Now, the president turned to his experts at NASA and said, "Are we ready?" The director of the space agency only half reassured him. He said, "We might not be able to send back films of the first steps on the moon." Well, President Nixon refused that idea. No way. The whole world is waiting to see an American take the first steps on the moon. Then one of the presidential advisors, I don't know, General Alexander Haig or Donald Rumsfeld, said hesitantly, what if we film the first steps on the moon in a studio? Then if we fail, we can always show those pictures to the public.
I talked to the president, and Kissinger supported it.
And at first I didn't take it very seriously, and I was told not to take it very seriously. Then it kept going on and on and on.
The president was prepared to do so, and I was prepared to support that.
And that was decided basically by Henry, Al Haig, and the Secretary of Defense.
I thought it was the right thing to do because we have to do something to show that we're still the United States of America. We walked out of the room, and President Nixon said, I've decided to do that, and I need you to do this job. We're going to do it. It was just amazing. So we were trying to figure out who would do what when. He simply has got to have the person he wants in that job. And it has to be someone who's capable of doing it, and it has to be somebody he knows well. I said, I'd like to talk to one person. And he said, who?
Donald Rumsfeld was the first to propose Stanley Kubrick. The film would have to be perfect, but the set could never be built in time. The filming of 2001: A Space Odyssey was drawing to a close in a suburb of London. Why not use the sets there? Rumsfeld was sure that Kubrick would not refuse.
If you look on this map, you will see every photograph taken by Apollo 10 of the Okhurt region, okay? Well, almost. You won't see this one. It's blank in the photo section. It doesn't appear on the maps. And as we zoom in, you'll see why this photograph is blanked out in the catalog. This is a castle floating 30 miles above the moon. Now, it's not a real castle, but it certainly looks like a castle. It looks like that one in Germany that they patterned, Sleeping Beauty's castle in Disney after. This is an absolutely stunning object. This should not exist. As one of our geologists said, hell, he said, Dick, when they looked out the windows, they should have been able to see the pigeons on that one as it went by. If you look at this carefully, and we've done a preliminary analysis because we literally just found this, all right, you can see that every part of the lighting is consistent with the sun coming in, a 3D glass crystalline structure, a remnant hanging on the rebar, the invisible dark substrate of the dome over Sinus Medii. And if you look really closely, notice how it's glowing. Notice how proportioned, how the shadows are falling correctly. When our photographic expert, Carrie Clark, at High Definition Image in New York, looked at this, she absolutely freaked out. Her first reaction was that can't be real.
coming across here and ending right here, this white spot, is a giant vehicle moving on the moon. Something like that, and it's leaving a tractor tread pattern across the moon as it moves. Now NASA actually even did a whole document study of this thing. It was so strange. They call it a rolling rock on the moon. And there's several of them. I mean, in the appendix of my book is the entire NASA study on these things. One of their rolling rocks, because in one of the photos there's two of them, one of these rolling rocks rolls out of a crater, up and out, and then down. This is another one, and it's moving along. Again, it makes a tread pattern. It's right here. Several of the early astronomers, one was a German named Gruithuisen, and later a French astronomer named Godebert. Also, by now they're looking through the moon in large telescopes from national observatories and things. They found what they called a city on the moon. But they drew illustrations. They appeared in all the astronomical journals of the time. Later now they find that the crater, that these structures that they had drawn, is even gone. And this became part of the whole story on the moon, is that craters suddenly appear, other craters disappear. One of the hypotheses to all this is that the moon is being mined. And the actual origin of many of the craters is not impact craters of asteroids, but they are literally open pit mines done as craters. This was called Modeler's Square, another city on the moon drawn by early astronomers. And it was a city that was like squared. This was something that even today, as you get into the Monuments of Mars kind of books and things, they're looking for oddball angles in the on Mars, on the moon. Early astronomers would say, well, here's a city laid out, walls of a city, that kind of thing. So it's looking at these for unusual formations and usually geometrical patterns that makes astronomers and other people say, this is not a natural structure, this is something artificial.
The Earth, over its 4.5 billion year history, has been pummeled by asteroids. Eroded by wind and rain, covered over with flowing lava, wrinkled and gouged by shifts in its crust. Most traces of its distant past have long since been destroyed. But there is a place where clues to the early history of our planet are still largely intact. The Moon. Scientists have been reconstructing its history by scouring its surface, mapping its mountains and craters, and probing its interior regions. What are they learning about our own planet's beginnings? By going back in time to the mysterious birth of the Moon. We sent astronauts to the Moon as a symbol of confidence in the face of the great Cold War struggle. Many hoped that would lead to further journeys to Mars and to an age of living in space. Those goals proved too grand in the face of all the preoccupations, turbulence, and change that would crash onto our own planetary shores. Landing on the Moon was a giant leap for mankind. But it's what the astronauts picked up from the lunar surface that may turn out to be Apollo's greatest legacy. When the astronauts of Apollo stepped out of their landing craft, they entered a world draped in fine, sticky dust, strewn with rocks and pocked with craters. They walked and rambled about, picking up rocks, 382 kilograms worth, that they packed for the return flight. Back in Earthbound labs, scientists went to work probing the rocks for clues to one of the most vexing questions in all of science. Where did the Moon come from? The answer promised to shed light on an even grander question. Where did Earth come from? And how did it evolve into the planet we know today? The Apollo rocks have brought us closer to the answer, but basic mysteries still remain. The Moon orbits Earth at an average distance of 384,400 kilometers. It's relatively small, with less than 1% the surface area, 2% the volume, and 1% the mass of Earth. With no atmosphere, temperatures range in Celsius from minus 233 degrees at night to 123 degrees during the day. As the brightest object in the night sky, the Moon has guided people for millennia by defining the rhythms of life and animating our myths. The nature of the Moon began to come into focus 4 centuries ago. Galileo Galilei had heard of an instrument built by Dutch opticians capable of seeing faraway things as though nearby. Galileo, in many ways the first modern scientist, saw this new instrument as a tool to help settle a long-standing question. What was the nature of the heavens, and how did the world of men fit within it? To some philosophers, the moon was a perfect crystalline sphere of divine substance, free of Earth's imperfections. Galileo, with his telescope, saw a more familiar reality. He noted mountains and valleys on the moon, features like those of Earth. Flash forward to the modern age of lunar studies. 1959 saw the first in a fleet of probes launched by the Soviet Union and the United States to shoot close-up pictures, take readings, and crash onto its surface. We learned then just how different the moon is from Earth, with its cratered and desiccated landscapes and lack of a magnetic field. That intensified a debate about the moon's origin that went back centuries. The so-called fission theory, championed by George Howard Darwin, son of Charles Darwin, held that the moon was once part of the Earth, cast off by the rapid spin of its young parent. For proof, look no farther than the Pacific Ocean, a giant hole in the Earth's surface. Then there's the capture theory, which holds that the moon was a wayward object that floated through our solar system and was pulled into orbit by Earth's gravity. A third idea came from the American astronomer Thomas Jefferson Jackson See, also known for his attacks on Einstein's theories and for charges of plagiarism that were leveled at him. He suggested that the moon formed near Earth and gradually fell under its gravitational spell. In that case, the moon should be a mini-Earth, which we now know it's not.
bypass across the board, Scooter, no action.
The astronauts of Apollo lifted off on a series of missions to get a close-up look at the moon and perhaps settle the debate. Because there's no atmosphere there, the astronauts entered landscapes that are nearly frozen in time. They could scour the lunar surface for evidence of events going back almost to the time of its birth. Indeed, eons of impacts had opened up the moon's interior, leaving a wealth of information strewn about their landing sites. Scientists had already noticed that some large old craters were surrounded by concentric rings. You can see one of the most pronounced examples in this image of the Mare Orientale, captured recently by NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, or LRO. The colors show differences in elevation. The old view was that the impact had melted the rock below. A newer view held that the impactor had actually splashed down on a molten surface. That gave rise to the radical notion that early in its history, the moon's surface was covered in a vast ocean of magma. When the astronauts arrived, they found relatively light rocks known as anorthosites. Their presence suggested that heavier material had sunk toward the moon's interior, forcing lighter material to the surface. The rocks they brought back were found to be strikingly similar to those on Earth, in part because they share forms of oxygen, called isotopes, that scientists regard as blood types for solar system bodies. Then there was this. The moon appeared to be completely, utterly dry, with no evidence that water was ever present on its surface. Not long after the last Apollo mission went into the history books, this initial evidence coalesced into a radical new idea, first presented in 1974 by the scientist and artist William Hartmann. His theory of the moon's formation is played out in this contemporary scenario. Sharing an orbit with Earth was a Mars-sized body called Theia, named for a Titan in Greek myth who gave birth to the moon goddess Selene. Its orbit became unstable, and it headed in Earth's direction. Theia hit at an oblique angle, causing the Earth to spin faster, and debris from both Theia and the Earth to fly into orbit. When the dust settled, the debris began to coalesce in Earth orbit, forming the moon. By then, volatile compounds like water had evaporated. The moon then comes primarily from the mantles of the Earth and Theia. That's why overall, the moon is lighter or less dense than Earth. It has a core of solid iron like Earth, but this core is relatively small compared to ours. From this violent beginning, the moon gradually cooled, and the magma that lined its surface hardened into a crust. Yet it was still subject to intense bombardment in the chaotic environment of the early solar system. Its surface has been hammered by large impacts at every stage in its history.
I started to look at this, and you realize that, as one scientist said, the only thing you can safely say about the moon is its observational error. It shouldn't be there. As someone, another scientist said, that with the Earth's magnetic field and the size of the Earth may well not have a satellite. And if it did have a satellite, it would be very, very small. One postulated maybe 30 miles around. This one's 2,160 miles around. In fact, it's bigger than Pluto. And some scientists don't see the Earth-Moon association so much as a dual planet association. It's massive. It shouldn't be there. And then you start to look at it, and of course 2 Russian scientists from the Soviet Academy of Sciences in the 70s wrote a very detailed article for a magazine, called Sputnik magazine, saying that the moon was actually a gigantic spacecraft, hollowed out spacecraft. I feel, it could be constructed from scratch, if you like, or it could be a hollowed out planetoid, because this is a really important area of perception. If you want to put people in a box in terms of their sense of possibility, then suppress the information that can give them a sense of possibility outside of the limits you want them to have. And if you do that, then when something comes along, or someone like me comes along and says this is happening well outside the box, people in the box who've taken on this limitation of possibility, God, that's impossible, that's ridiculous. No, it's impossible for humans to do it. It ain't impossible to do. And so we need to open our minds to the fact that, funny enough, sits back in amazement, humanity at this time is not at the cutting edge of possibility. I mean, please.
You think?
Have you seen George Bush? Anyway, this has been done by an incredibly advanced, technologically, not necessarily spiritually, probably not, race of whatever. And I've started to see the modus operandi. And in many ways, it's very much symbolized by the Death Star in the Star Wars movies. Star Wars movies, of course, produced by George Lucas, massive insider. Because of the effect these moons of that size have on a planet like the Earth. When you move the moon close to the Earth, it starts to affect its speed of spin, and it starts to make it go at an angle, which is what the Earth does. We have seasons because of that angle, which makes the Earth, in its relationship with the Sun, have this period of years with different seasons. So then you look at the ancient accounts all over the world, and they talk about fantastic cataclysmic events which ended a golden age, which ended a whole civilization. Some people talk about Atlantis and Lemuria and all that stuff. And there are many clear, constant checklist items on that cataclysm description. Whether it's the Great Flood in the Bible, whether it's wherever you go in the world, you find the same thing. 1, massive earthquakes, great volcanic eruptions, a tidal wave, massive tidal wave, and the Earth turned over. If you move the moon in, say it's coming into where it is for the first time, it totally changes the Earth. It moves it on an angle, the Earth turned over. The pressure of all that stuff would create tremendous geological impacts. And what would happen if you've got a planet which is overwhelmingly made up of vast oceans of water, and the planet did that?
Right.
You would have the most extraordinary tidal wave just by the momentum of the water. And And then you look at so many different tribal legends around the world. I mean, I come across them directly through Craig Muchworth, the African legends. When I was starting to put this together, I called him the great Zulu shaman, coming up to his 90th year now. And I didn't say, hey Credo, I reckon the moon's this, that, and the other. I said, can you just tell me any African legends about the moon? I try to avoid very much telling people what I'm feeling and then saying, what do you think?
Right.
If they have information they could give me, I like to keep my mouth shut, keep my powder dry, as someone said to me once, and then see what they say when they're coming from none of this preamble. And he goes on with this story. He says, well, we think the moon's an egg. Now, of course, anthropologists go along and say, they think the moon's an egg, they're primitive. Well, what are they saying it's an egg? Just it's symbolism, mate, please. I think anthropologists do symbolism very well. But they call it an egg because they say the moon had its yolk taken out. It was an egg that had the yolk removed. It was hollowed out. And this is what these scientists were saying in the 70s about it, these Russian scientists. And he said that the legends say that the moon was created far, far away, that it was hollowed out and dragons come into it. It was stolen from the great fire dragon and was rolled across the heavens to the earth. And when it arrived here, it caused great cataclysms, which is what it would do, as we've discussed. And the story is that there were two reptilian creatures, or reptilian entities, better word, I don't like creatures, called Wawani and Umpanku. And they were known as, they were brothers, and they were known as like fish gods. They had scaly skin like a fish, quote from the legend. Now, immediately he's telling me this, I'm thinking Sumer, I'm thinking Sumerian tablets, I'm thinking the Anunnaki, and the two brothers that were leaders of the Anunnaki, according to the Sumerian tablets, Enlil and Enki. And of course, Enki, for one, was very much associated with water. He had another name which was related to his association with water. And so basically I'm looking at the same story using different names. And the modus operandi, it seems to me, is they move these moons in. When they do so, it wipes the slate of the civilization that's there before. And when everything settles down, they start rebuilding the world, the target world, in their image as a slave race to them. Now, again, we're talking numbers here. The number of people on Earth is enormous compared with the non-human entities that are manipulating through these human hybrid bloodlines that we talked about before. And therefore, these entities have to keep from the target population the fact that what they're doing. It's all, again and again, ancient and modern, I come across this theme. They are terrible.
Okay, so how do you do this, Richard? You don't have billions of dollars of satellite equipment and all this, but for years you've been saying there's water on Mars and there's water on the Moon. How do you do this?
We've been looking at evidence that there are ruins now left by someone, probably the ancestors of the human race, all over the solar system. And where you have ruins, you have water.
Are they still going to use this probe in October where they were supposed to blast a massive hole or crater?
What they're going to do in October, on October 9th, in the wee hours of October 9th, they're going to drop a spent upper rocket stage called a Centaur rocket, which has been, developed for the last, 40 years.
Yeah.
And they're going to drop this on the moon at impact velocities as one would come down from outer space, pulled in by the moon's gravity. And when it hits, it will convert that kinetic energy of motion, of speed, of velocity, to basically a mini explosion. It's equivalent to about one car bomb in Baghdad. It's about 1 ton of TNT equivalent, and it will produce a really tiny crater. It'll be a crater about the size of a small house. It'll be maybe 15, 20 feet deep, maybe 60, 70 feet wide.
We're watching the remaining few seconds of the L-Cross mission as we approach very rapidly the surface of the Cabeus crater.
Mark, transition to DV mode. Stand by for shepherding spacecraft impact.
The very last seconds of the shepherding spacecraft trajectory as it approaches the lunar surface. We are seeing very small craters within the crater.
We confirm a thermal signature of the crater. Our mid-hour cameras. Over.
The ground stations at Goldstone just reported
last track is 11:35.054 seconds.
The shepherding spacecraft has hit the surface of the moon, and this marks the end of the L-Cross flight mission.
Okay, some smiles and some congratulations right there. You can see some people watching that unprecedented experiment by NASA there, crashing 2 pieces of equipment into the moon to try to find out if, in fact, there is frozen molecular water in the moon. And that's something that NASA scientists were hoping to find out about that.
tonight I'd like to talk about how the government has been mining on the moon for the past 40 years and how the public, Congress, and most everyone else have been kept out of the loop. How Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Space Lab, the shuttle, and the International Space Station are all cover for what's really going on. As a matter of fact, we first started sending men to the moon in 1962. We were going to Mars in 1966 and have traveled throughout the solar system since then. And tonight I'm going to show you the photographs taken by NASA themselves that will show mining operations currently in operation. And these are not artifacts of ancient civilizations on the moon. This is going on here and now. And so I ordered some photos from NASA of these pictures of Copernicus. Here's the deal, George, and here's how it got so interesting. Somebody sent me, and I'll never know who it was, a 16 by 20 negative of 162H, Lunar Orbiter 2, oblique photo of Copernicus, which had not been airbrushed at all. And what happened is I had no way to print a 16 by 20 negative, so that thing sat in my garage for 2 or 3 years until the technology got to the point where I could go downtown and get somebody to print it. When I did, it was spectacularly clear. I took it over to Bob Lazar's, and it was so big that he had to make 4 different scans of it, and we started looking at it, and it was just really interesting. And people started to contribute. Yeah, I see this, I see that, and we just amassed all these things that were going on Copernicus. It's obviously a mining operation.
How do we know, John, if these mining operations are ours and not extraterrestrial events?
Well, I'm sure they're part extraterrestrial. We couldn't have possibly put that massive a mining operation together in 40 years. I mean, we could have. I don't think we did. Somebody else is up there. Somebody else built all those buildings. There's no possible way we could have done that. Now, the reason I know that we're involved is several years ago, I ran into a real honest-to-gosh government insider. He's dead now, but he told me 3 things, and one was that we had been going to the moon since 1962, that the population of Mars was 600 million, and they looked just like us. And the other thing was that he had worked on a piece of mining equipment that was to go to the moon. He said, John, he said, we built this thing down in Alabama, way out in the nowhere. He said, it was so enormous. He said, when we finished the project, he said, I actually rented a little airplane. He said, I'm a private pilot, and flew around this piece of equipment just to get an idea of how big it was. And I said, geez, that's fantastic. How did they get it to the moon?
Yeah.
He said, I don't know.
What are they mining for, John?
That is a good question. What we think that they're mining for is helium-3, and helium-3 would be an excellent power source if we can get fusion together.
That could power the planet for years.
Yes.
So old Gary McKinnon decides to hack into some government websites and computers. He's looking for information about UFOs and extraterrestrials, and this guy could get 80 years. But what do you think this guy was really hacking into?
He was just seeing what he could find, and what he found was a list of the Secret Astronaut Corps. The Secret Astronaut Corps was formed at the same time that the Public Astronaut Corps was formed. But the Secret Astronaut Corps were the ones that were going to the moon in 1962, and here we were just making suborbital flights and then finally an orbital flight.
奶外面有个齐天大圣要接把脚包
To the moon for an update on China's Chang'e 3 lunar mission. The rover and lander have taken photos of each other for the fifth and final time. And the next step is scientific survey and exploration. Clear, complete images of Chang'e 3 lander have been sent back to Earth. And the U2 rover carries a panoramic camera for real-time video transmission.
奶外面有个齐天大圣要接把脚包山。奶外面有个齐天大圣要接把脚包山。奶外面有个齐天大圣要接把脚包山。奶外面有个齐天大圣要接把脚包山。奶外面有个齐天大圣要接把脚包山。
This is the moment China's Jade Rabbit rover made its final approach to the moon. On Saturday, the rover carefully rolled down a ramp lowered by the lander. When it reached the volcanic plain, it became the first robot to do so in nearly 40 years. On Sunday, the two machines began photographing each other. Clearly flying a Chinese flag, the rover is expected to work for around 3 months.
China's state media has released this panoramic picture showing the area in which their moon rover Jade Rabbit touched down. China landed their unmanned spacecraft on the moon on December 14th, and according to the State Administration for Science, Technology and Industry for National Defense, it has begun scientific operations on the lunar surface. The panoramic image itself was created by placing multiple other images together.
The entire picture was pieced together with 60 photos taken 3 times from 3 angles, 0 degrees, 15 degrees down from horizon and 30 degrees. The purpose of shooting from 3 angles is to capture from one side to the other in order to see further.
Despite their current mission only having just begun, China announced last week that they would be launching their next generation of unmanned moon probe in 2017, and that it would have an aim of bringing back lunar samples. China's leadership has placed great importance on advancing their space program, and their president is keen for China to establish itself as a space power.
The Chang'e 3 lunar probe has successfully conducted scientific analysis of the moon's soil below the surface. It was done over a period of 2 months. Scientists say the job is very challenging in that they need to control a robotic arm 380,000 kilometers away, and this requires millimeter-level precision. The lunar rover called Yutu found there are 11 chemical elements existing in the soil, including magnesium, aluminum, and titanium, and iron, and all useful resources that can potentially be used.
El Apolo 11 pisó la Luna el 20 de julio de 1969 al sur del Mar de la Tranquilidad. Horas más tarde, el comandante Neil Armstrong fue el primer hombre que puso su pie en el astro plateado, marcando con este hecho a toda una generación y por ende al resto de la historia de nuestro joven planeta. Mucho es lo que se ha hablado, mucho es lo que se ha opinado y especulado sobre este acontecimiento. Hay muchas personas que opinan que el vuelo del Apolo, el viaje del Apolo, nunca existió, pertenece al mundo de la ciencia ficción, que las imágenes que hemos podido contemplar han sido filmadas y trucadas en un estudio cinematográfico. Nosotros no vamos a entrar en esta discusión, vamos a pensar, vamos a dirigirnos a otro aspecto de la cuestión, no menos interesante e intrigante. Les suponemos a ustedes enterados de los rumores que en los últimos meses azotan como un vendaval a la NASA. Unos rumores que nos hablan de unos archivos, unas imágenes, unas filmaciones, como mínimo incómodas para el programa espacial norteamericano y, por qué no decirlo, para el resto del mundo. Estas imágenes que hemos visto son un ejemplo esclarecedor, junto con otros archivos y otras imágenes, de una realidad que los gobiernos, las potencias, han querido ocultar a la opinión pública. ¿Por qué? Tal vez porque quieren cubrir algunos errores o porque su contenido revela una realidad realmente aterradora. Pensamos que es una buena pregunta. Quizás para responderla tengamos que retroceder a otra época, a unos tiempos donde no hubiera sido imaginable una salida al espacio, unos vuelos y tampoco unos eventuales paseos lunares. Desde el siglo XVIII, la comunidad astronómica comenzó a sentirse interesada por unas extrañas luces o haces lumínicos que podían ser vistos en las noches claras y despejadas en cráteres y valles lunares. Estos asombrosos eventos luminiscentes eran conocidos con el desapasionado nombre de fenómenos lunares transitorios. No obstante, estos fenómenos transitorios parecían empeñarse en dejarse ver por cada vez más número de estudiosos y apasionados selenógrafos. Pero, ¿qué estaba ocurriendo en la Luna? ¿Acaso una suerte de histeria colectiva había nublado el buen juicio de tantos científicos? Bien, nosotros no podemos pensar que personas, en su mayoría escépticas, pudieran caer en cuentos y habladurías. En los principios del programa espacial, el Apolo 8 observa una extraña fuente lumínica situada entre los cráteres Messier y Pickering de los montes Pickering. El Apolo 10 observa un pequeño objeto en el momento en que se está realizando el ensamblaje lunar. Y el Apolo 16 nos presenta unas imágenes de algo parecido a un ovni. Sin duda, en la Luna estaba y está ocurriendo algo extraordinario. Tal vez algo extraordinario ocasionado por fenómenos naturales desconocidos, o tal vez ocasionado por la acción de seres venidos de otros confines de la galaxia. Ya en los albores de la frenética carrera espacial, los soviéticos habían tomado la delantera con los programas Sputnik, Zond y Luna. Dos de estas últimas, Luna 17 y Luna 21, llevaban consigo dos pequeñas misiones robot conocidas como Lunokhod. Sondas robot equipadas con todo tipo de artilugios destinados al análisis, clasificación y exploración de zonas que comprendían el cráter Monnier y las montañas Tauro. Sus fotografías, al igual que las de las misiones Apolo, mostraban una luna totalmente árida y carente de vida. Una luna árida y carente de vida es lo que cualquier científico serio apostaría y sin duda lo hace. Pero durante los años que duraron estas misiones hubo un ir y venir de datos como si se tratara de una novela de espías. Al parecer, las misiones soviéticas Lunokhod habrían encontrado algo inusual, algo fuera de toda lógica, algo que superaría a la mejor narración de ciencia ficción. Por imposible que parezca, de lo que nos hablarían estos datos filtrados, estas informaciones clasificadas, sería ni más ni menos que de restos de carácter, podríamos definirlo como manufacturado. Libres son los escépticos de tachar de falsas todas estas informaciones y datos, porque las autoridades soviéticas, con un hermetismo agresivo, nunca han permitido estudiar todas estas informaciones. Pero diferente es la cosa en el país del dólar, donde cualquier objeto, cualquier observación es susceptible de venta. Este es el caso de las películas y fotografías que hoy podremos ver, comentar y poner en tela de juicio. Muchos han querido ver en estos archivos la prueba definitiva de la existencia, lanzamiento y posterior ocultación de las misiones Apolo 18, 19 y, sobre todo, Apolo 20. Sobre esta última misión, el Apolo 20, recaería una gran rumorología de ocultación de elementos extraterrestres, o por lo menos, apoyándonos en las observaciones del Lunokhod 2, de elementos no naturales, manufacturados. Oficialmente el programa Apolo llegó a su fin con la misión Apolo-Soyuz, que sustituía la denominada y transformada Apolo 18. Años antes, el 19 de diciembre de 1972, Cernan, Smith y Evans del Apolo 17 concluían la sexta y última misión a suelo lunar. La Luna ya no interesaba a nadie, o al menos eso se deducía de la conducta de los gobiernos. Los recortes drásticos en materia económica del senador Bill Proxmith llevó a la necesaria desmantelación de numerosas instalaciones espaciales. Por su parte, el programa soviético, con su Lunar Lore 2, dejó de funcionar tan solo 7 meses después de la llegada del Apolo 17. Un Lunar Lore 2 que, habiendo hecho unas aportaciones interesantes, pues dejó de funcionar, como decimos, estando situado tan solo a 117 millas de los restos del módulo lunar del Apolo 17. Sin duda, un caldo de cultivo adecuado para diversas teorías y especulaciones sobre operaciones extrañas. Una de esas teorías nos hablaría de que quizás la misión Apolo hubiera sido solamente una pantalla, una cortina de humo para ocultar unas bases lunares cuyo fin sería la investigación y análisis de restos extraterrestres sobre nuestro satélite. A todas esas informaciones ocultas a la opinión pública, reunidas en un archivo, se le codificaría como Orange Mission. En sus pantallas, supuestas imágenes de NASA, retales tan solo de una gran cantidad de anomalías, de restos de algo o de alguien, imágenes imposibles, imágenes que transmitirían inquietud de ser ciertas, ya que nuestra historia quedaría vacía, incompleta, observada o manipulada, mutilada por la ignorancia o por la convicción de convertirse en algo aterrador, en algo demasiado complicado para querer ser entendido o explicado. Estas imágenes son realmente impactantes, quizás demasiado impactantes si no las vemos en un contexto aclarador. Sería posible que nos llevaran a conclusiones precipitadas, sobre todo si fueran avaladas por la NASA. Me explico. En esta fotografía podemos ver que existen unas imágenes. Una de ellas tiene la forma de una pirámide, claramente parece una pirámide o una construcción egipcia. Y en la parte inferior vemos una mancha. Hay que destacar que esta fotografía pertenece a los archivos de la NASA, concretamente al Apolo 17. Entonces, ¿qué impide a esta foto ser prueba de construcciones en la Luna? Lamentablemente para nuestro debate y también para los investigadores, lo que nos muestra esta foto no es lo que en principio pudiéramos pensar. Se trata de una fotografía desafortunada tomada desde la Tierra a control remoto y que nos muestra la base del vehículo lunar. Tras el hincapié hecho en esta pareidolia y con la precaución de dudar de lo que vemos o lo que queremos ver en las imágenes, continuaremos con su examen y con las opiniones de los científicos sobre ellas. Imágenes de Orange Mission. El astronauta parece que ha encontrado algo semienterrado en el suelo. Las comunicaciones están claramente alteradas. Lo que sea les provoca un gran asombro. Han localizado algo tal vez esperado y, por qué no decirlo, buscado. Al parecer, han encontrado una especie de losa o pequeña columna con rudimentarios grabados. Y con esta imagen estalla la polémica. ¿Truco, manipulación o realidad? Muy caprichosa debería ser la geología para generar unos ángulos tan perfectos en una simple roca. No, ni siquiera el espacio crea superficies de vértices tan definidos. Para muchos estas imágenes son pruebas irrefutables del paso de seres extraterrestres por la Luna. Y es más, de que la Luna es de origen extraterrestre. Estas teorías vendrían a coincidir con las afirmaciones de Basen y Serbakov, que afirmaban la naturaleza artificial de la Luna. Al parecer hay un grupo de militares estadounidenses vinculados a la operación Orbiter que afirman que en las fotografías tomadas alrededor de la Luna antes de la llegada del hombre allí, se observan construcciones en forma de cúpulas, edificios altos como agujas o edificios de fachadas resplandecientes. Arquitecturas construidas, según las mismas fuentes e hipótesis, ni más ni menos que con cristal. Incluso se apuntaría que esas construcciones, solo visibles en determinados momentos y según cómo los rayos del sol incidieran en las mismas, estas construcciones, repito, no serían fijas, sino que al parecer serían móviles, al disponer de capacidad de trasladarse por la superficie. Ciudades de cristal, restos extraterrestres, encuentros ovni. De un momento a esta parte, nuestra querida Luna se nos antoja extraña, más que desconocida, casi ajena. Rocas de hasta 10.000 millones de años, fechas imposibles que superarían incluso las edades de nuestro sistema solar. Una masa imposible sin la existencia de una estructura interna que la consolidara y la preservara de los terribles impactos de meteoros. Una composición química rica en elementos volátiles, gran cantidad de óxido férreo y elementos siderófilos, demasiado extraños, demasiado distintos de los de la Tierra. La posición exacta para equilibrar y defender a nuestro planeta. La posición y el tamaño exacto para cubrir perfectamente el Sol durante los eclipses. Una luna con dos caras muy distintas, como si una de ellas, el lado oculto de la misma, hubiera servido de escudo en un largo viaje. Ahora bien, ¿y si la luna no hubiera estado siempre ahí? ¿Y si nuestro joven planeta hubiera conocido un tiempo primigenio más convulso e inestable, en donde sus cielos nocturnos quedaran libres del majestuoso satélite? Con todos estos datos, y más si caben, derivados de la observación de estas imágenes, a Basen y Serbakov no les faltó tiempo para reunir todas las teorías y formular una nueva que daría fin y compendio a todas ellas. Según esta teoría, efectivamente la Luna tendría un origen distante y habría sido colocada deliberadamente en la órbita terrestre por seres con la tecnología suficiente como para convertir una roca inerte en una verdadera nave espacial. Esta arca de Noé intergaláctica probablemente transportaría los últimos resquicios de una civilización moribunda, que al toparse con un planeta convulso, pero adecuado para la vida, intercedería deliberadamente en su evolución. Pero, ¿quiénes podrían ser esos seres? Y, sobre todo, de ser cierta esta teoría, ¿dónde están? Bien, por rocambolesco que les parezca, Basen y Serbakov apuntan la posibilidad de que esos seres, procedentes de un rincón remoto de la galaxia, capaces de viajar durante décadas en la nave Luna, con capacidad de intervenir y modificar las condiciones de un planeta, capaces de determinar la evolución de las especies, esos seres, apuntan Basen y Serbakov, seríamos nosotros.